Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So today in the bio-inorganic series for competitive exams, we will be talking about iron. तो ये जो element है iron, it has very important role in the living systems, whether we have plants or animals. ठीक है? So I will be discussing to the point questions here and the basics which are usually asked in the exams and why from the questions asked. ठीक है? तो start कर लेते हैं हम iron से. देखिए, if we talk about iron, first point I'll be discussing is iron is present in the porphyrin ring. Now the ring, porphyrin ring जो हमने last class में discuss की कि वो जो porphyrin ring है where we have four pyrrole rings which are connected through the methane bridge. तो वो जो ring है that was called as the heme ring. तो basically iron जो है it is present as in the form of a ring in following compounds. So we can say that point number one, as far as iron is concerned, the living systems, compounds containing, so I'll write down compounds containing one or more heme groups. Compounds containing one or more heme groups. Heme groups, जैसा कि मैंने बोला, it means you have that porphyrin ring and then iron at the center. जो हमने last class में discuss किया था, where we have four pyrrole rings. For example, I will make it here. Let's say this is one pyrrole, another pyrrole ring, another pyrrole ring, another pyrrole ring. So let's say this is the nitrogen. ठीक? And they're connected by the methane bridges. So they're connected by the methane bridges. Let's say it's like this. And then we have iron here at the center. So this is called as the heme protein या heme group. तो जिन compounds में या जिन proteins में आपका heme group होता है, those we are discussing here. So the compound number one you have, that is your hemoglobin. Hemoglobin. And it's generally written as HB. So it contains your heme protein. That is that macrocyclic ring where we have four pyrrole groups at the four corners connected by the methane groups, and then we have iron at the center. Okay? Number one. Then we have another protein called as another heme protein, which is myoglobin. So you can write down it as MB. So this also contains that heme group and iron at the center. Then we have one more called as cytochromes or cytochromes. Okay? So they also contain this heme group. And then we have P450. It's also called as cytochrome P450. These are the major four compounds present in the living organisms, whether plants or animals, which contain the heme protein. That is the macrocyclic ring, four pyrrole groups at the four corners and connected by the methane bridge with iron at the center. ठीक है? अब hemoglobin and this myoglobin जो है, this is very important topic, so this will be discussing separately in the incoming lectures. Rather, there will be 3-4 classes. They will be strictly dealing with the hemoglobin and myoglobin. क्योंकि इसमें questions 100% will get a question from this portion. ठीक है? तो hemoglobin जो है in general मैं यहाँ पे shortcut में discuss करूँगा. What is this hemoglobin? What it does is it's present in the blood cells. So what it does, it is useful in the transport of oxygen between lungs and the tissues. ठीक है? So it's oxygen transport. I'll write it down, oxygen transport. So it plays important role in the oxygen transport in the human body. ठीक है. Myoglobin, this is a smaller unit than the hemoglobin. This also we'll discuss in the coming lectures. So what it does is it's present in you can write down muscle cells. Okay. So what it does is it has a useful application, that it's important in the storage of oxygen. Storage of oxygen in shortcut. Okay. And then if you talk about the cytochrome, the cytochrome is basically if you remember the process of your the respiration. So cytochrome is present there. It has an important role in this electron transport. So cytochrome is present in the mitochondria. Remember this, mitochondria. Cell के अंदर जो एक component होता है, very important, mitochondria, which is called the powerhouse of the cell, which generates the ATP and energy. So it's present there. It plays an important role there. ठीक है, cytochromes. And then we have one more, that is your cytochrome P450. So this is also very important, that it's present in the living cells in the endoplasmic reticulum, ER, endoplasmic reticulum. ये वहाँ पे present होता है. This is your cytochrome P450. So it's present in the endoplasmic reticulum. Okay. We know that the process of respiration, where we have the living body takes the oxygen and then it burns the glucose, converts this into different compounds, and meanwhile generates the ATP, NADP, NADPH. वहाँ पे क्या होता है? This cytochrome, what it does, it has an important role as an oxygen transport. It plays a very important role in the electron transport. So it plays an important role in the electron transport. Same is the case. This is basically a type of cytochrome. So both cytochrome and cytochrome 450, they have an important role in the electron transport. Now यहाँ पे एक question है कि जो आपका first, this is your cytochrome P450. इसकी जो important application है, that is it plays an important role in the detoxification of drugs. Detoxification of metabolites. Detoxification of drugs and other metabolites. Okay. So these are the basic four compounds, and the basic information about these four compounds present in the living systems which contain the one or more heme groups. ठीक है, तो यहाँ से question आ सकता है. This is one portion of your iron. Now if you talk about the second portion, that is point number 2, which is iron sulfur proteins. So your point number 2, when we talk about iron in the living systems, that is iron sulfur proteins. So मैंने पहले भी कहा कि need not to worry about the exact structure of these molecules. That will be tough to remember. Question जहाँ से आता है, straightforward, I am going in that direction. So iron sulfur proteins की अगर हम बात करेंगे, then we have let's go here. We have one protein, that is your rubridoxin. That is your rubridoxin. Then we have ferridoxin. And then we have one more, that is your I remember, this is nitrogenase enzyme. Nitrogenase enzyme. So ये तीन important जहाँ से question आता है, 3 proteins or enzymes which contain iron and sulfur. They're called iron sulfur proteins. ठीक है. The rubridoxin जो है, where it's present in the those sulfur bacteria, जो बैक्टीरिया सल्फर को यूटिलाइज करती हैं फॉर जनरेटिंग द एनर्जी, कॉल्ड सल्फर मेटाबोलाइजिंग बैक्टीरिया. सो इट्स प्रेजेंट देयर. दे हैव दिस आयरन सल्फर प्रोटीन कॉल्ड एज रुब्रोडॉक्सिन. द फेरिडॉक्सिन की जो बात है, इट्स प्रेजेंट इन द बैक्टीरियाज एज वेल एज प्लांट्स. सो इट्स प्रेजेंट इन बैक्टीरियाज एंड प्लांट्स में जो लीव्स में जो क्लोरोप्लास्ट होता है, इट्स देयर आल्सो क्लोरोप्लास्ट्स. So it's present there. ठीक है. Then we have nitrogenase. Now this is very important. Nitrogenase जो है, what is present in the plants, those leguminous plants. Leguminous plants. So what this does, this nitrogenase enzyme, it converts atmospheric, it fixes the atmospheric nitrogen and then converts this into ammonia. So that means अगर आप नाइट्रोजन का स्ट्रक्चर देखोगे, it is N triple bond N. ठीक है. So then if you reduce this, if you add hydrogen on this, so one एक हाइड्रोजन इस पे, एक इस पे, so one bond gets broken down. Second hydrogen, second, third. So you are total providing 6 hydrogens. Then you will get 2 ammonia molecules. So basically it is doing the reduction. Okay? So nitrogen does the reduction, it fixes the atmospheric nitrogen, reduces this and then converts this into ammonia. This is also called the process of nitrogen fixation. So that enzyme also contains iron and sulfur proteins. Okay? So this is another category of your iron containing compounds or proteins. Third, तीसरी की जब हम बात करेंगे, that I am going to write down as diiron oxo-bridged compounds. Oxo-bridged compounds. One more point, just I got back it. ये जो nitrogenous होता है, nitrogenous enzyme, it contains, it's an iron sulfur proteins, but besides iron sulfur it also contains molybdenum. Remember, this is very important. So it also contains molybdenum. In addition to iron and sulfur, the element iron and sulfur inside this compound, it also contains molybdenum. So this is very important. Okay. So third category is diiron oxo-bridged complex. What does it mean? Now diiron oxo-bridged complex is like this. You have iron here, then they have bridged by this oxygen atom. So this type of structure is called as a diiron oxo-bridged complex. ठीक है. So ये जो है, this linkage is present in these compounds called as diiron oxo-bridged compounds. अब देखिए ये किन किन में होता है. So you can write down number 1, hemoerythrin. So write down hemeerythrin. Then you can write down number 2 as ribonucleotide reductase. It's also written as RNR, ribonucleotide reductase. Then we have one more enzyme which contains this diiron oxo bridge, that is your methane monooxygenase. Methane monooxygenase. That's your methane monooxygenase. So these are the 3 important compounds which contain this diiron oxo bridge. ठीक है. अच्छा, इनके बारे में थोड़ा सा हम बात कर लेते हैं. हेमीएरिथ्रिन जो है, it's present in, we talk about hemeerythrin, It's a non-heme protein because ये मैंने heme की जो 3 proteins है that I discussed in the beginning, that is hemoglobin, myoglobin, cytochrome, and then cytochrome P450. So it's a non-heme protein. So when it's a non-heme protein, so it's present in the marine invertebrates. Marine invertebrates. Okay. So what they do is they are useful in the oxygen transport. तो ये वहाँ पे oxygen transport का काम करते हैं. जैसे यहाँ पे हमारे यहाँ body में that is your hemoglobin. So hemoerythrin also carries the same function in those organisms that are present in the invertebrates that are present in the marine systems. So what they do is the oxygen transport. अब यहाँ पे एक important चीज which we are discussing here. ये जो hemoerythrin है, let me write it as HE for shortcut. So HE जब होता है hemoerythrin, when it binds oxygen, so we say it is oxygenated hemoerythrin. For example, I will show it like this roughly. So ये जो oxygenated hemoerythrin है, it gets color that is pink color. So इसका color pink होता है when it is binded with the oxygen. So when it releases the oxygen at a particular site, let's say it releases the oxygen then gets converted back to this HE. So it releases the oxygen. तो जो deoxygenated state इसका होता है, normal state. Now that is colorless. Remember this. This is very important. So this state is colorless. So and the deoxygenated form it is colorless, but in the oxygenated form it is pink. ठीक है, this is hemoerythrin. Then if we talk about before we'll go to the ribonucleotide, this is nucleotide reductase. एक another important protein होता है which is not containing iron, but that I will discuss here. You have one more protein which is your let me write it here. That is hemocyanin. So I'm discussing it here because I'm not going to deal this in the separate topic. Hemocyanin is basically another pigment which has important role in the oxygen transport, but it is present in the mollusks जो होते हैं and arthropods, insects, arthropods. They contain the pigment called as hemocyanin. उसमें when let us say if I write hemocyanin by HC, so when it binds with the oxygen, it's called as oxygenated hemocyanin. Now, in the oxygenated state, this is blue. And when it deoxygenates, gets back converted to hemocyanin. Now, in this state, this hemocyanin has a color. It is colorless. Remember this. So it is like hemoerythrin. So in case of hemoerythrin, when we have He present, it's colorless, but in presence of oxygen, it is pink. Hemocyanin in presence of oxygen is blue, but when it is alone, it's colorless. Okay? But remember, this is present in the mollusks and arthropods, and it doesn't contain the iron. It contains pigment. This pigment contains the element that's copper. So मैंने इसको यहाँ पे separate किया, इसको मैंने, even though it doesn't belongs to the iron category of proteins, but this is very important because I'm not going to deal this separately. ठीक है? So hemocyanin contains copper. Now let's move the next one, that is RNR, ribonucleotide reductase. अच्छा, ये जो ribonucleotide reductase है, so this is present in, so what this does, as the word says, it is reductase. It's doing reduction, either addition of hydrogen or removal of oxygen. So what it does, it converts ribonucleotides to deoxyribonucleotides, deoxy form. So what is actually removing the oxygen, okay? So it converts the ribonucleotides to deoxyribonucleotide form. It's called as the enzyme which will do this function, that is this transformation, that is ribonucleotide reductase. Okay? So this is the function of this enzyme, and it contains also this iron, di-iron oxygen bridge. Then we have one more protein, which is your methane monooxygenase, third one. Methane monooxygenase. ये जो methane monooxygenase है, it's present in the bacteria. So ये basically क्या करते हैं bacteria? They deal with that methane production. ठीक है? So what is that? Is present in the membrane of these bacteria. This enzyme. So they basically convert methane into methanol. This is your short form of methanol, MEOH. So this methane monooxygenase, it converts methane to methanol. That is, it's doing the oxidation basically. Okay? It's present in the bacteria, methanogenic bacteria. So this also contains di-iron oxygen bridge, जो कि main portion है इसमें जहाँ से question आता है. So this was all about the topics material regarding the portion where the question can be asked in your CSIR-NET JRF exams. Let's go back, have a review here. So iron in living systems. Compounds containing one or more heme groups, that is, they have this type of a structure, 4 pyrrole rings, and then connected by this methane bridge, iron at the center. So hemoglobin, myoglobin, cytochrome, these are both cytochromes, but this is cytochrome P450. These cytochromes, they have important role in the respiration, that is the electron transport. Hemoglobin present in the blood cells, it's important in the oxygen transport. इसको हम discuss भी करेंगे separately. Likely myoglobin, it is important in the oxygen storage. Okay, that also will be discussing separately. Cytochrome present in the mitochondria, likely E, that's your P450 cytochrome, it's present in the endoplasmic reticulum. Both have the role in the electron transport. Okay. Then iron sulfur proteins, which contain iron and sulfur, or we can say they contain FeS linkage. They have rubredoxin present in the bacteria, ferredoxin present in the chloroplast and bacteria, nitrogen is present in the leguminous plants which contain atmospheric nitrogen into the ammonia by the reduction process. Besides iron and sulfur, they also contain molybdenum. Then we have another important category, that is iron, di-iron oxo-bridged compounds. This type of linkage they have. So we have hemerythrin, a ribonucleotide reductase, and methane monooxygenase. Hemerythrin is present in the invertebrates. It converts it once it is in the oxidized form or oxygenated form. It is pink, but when it is isolated, it is colorless. Okay? So ribonucleotide reductase, the word suggests what this enzyme does. It converts the ribonucleotides into deoxyform. Ribonucleotides, it's very easy. You know that it contains sugar component plus your base, and then when it is linked to phosphorus, it's called a ribonucleotide. Agar phosphorus नहीं, it's called ribonucleoside. So when you have a ribonucleotide in the living system, it converts this enzyme into deoxyform. That is, it removes the oxygen. So it's doing basically the reduction. Okay? And then another protein is that's methane monooxygenase present in the bacteria. Those bacteria will deal with the methane. So what they do, they convert methane into methanol. So it's basically the oxidation. तो ये पोर्शन है, यहाँ से आपका क्वेश्चन आता है एज पर एज रोल ऑफ आयरन इन द लिविंग सिस्टम्स इज कंसर्न्ड. यहीं से क्वेश्चन आया. इफ यू सी द प्रीवियस पेपर्स, this is the portion where from the questions are asked. But yes, we need to remember these points: role of reproduction, role of ferredoxin, whether they contain heme ring or not, whether they contain oxygen bridge or not, and whether they contain iron or sulfur. So we have to remember these all points. This is more than enough as far as role of iron in the living system is concerned. Okay? So the next class जो है इसमें will be dealing purely with the hemoglobin and myoglobin. Probably it will take 3-4 classes. So with that we will sum up this whole bio-inorganic portion for your CSIR, NET, GATE, JRF and related exams. So if you have any questions, you can write down in the comments. Thank you.